In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 things I absolutely love about the Panasonic GH5. So it's been a little over a year since I bought the GH5 and I absolutely love it. I actually put out a video called 5 things I hate about the GH5, but that's just me being nitpicky about this camera. No camera is perfect, but this one is pretty dang close for me and what I do. So the number one thing I like about this camera is the dual SD card slots. What I have here is 228 gigabyte micro SD cards that are within a bigger one, ordered off of Amazon. They have very fast write speed and read speed, and I have them tracking redundantly one card to the other. And for what I do, mostly weddings, is I want to make sure that I have a backup of everything that is shot on this camera. Not saying an SD card is going to fail and I'm going to have to try to recover the footage. I just always like to have backups. Even when I get home after shooting something, I instantly back up the files because you never know. You never want to be in that situation that something happens and you lose all the files. So that's number one. The next one is Wi-Fi connectability. So when I first bought this camera, it wasn't one of the biggest things that stood out to me for the reason of purchasing it, but I ended up finding that I used it a lot. And one of the main things is being out on a shoot and being able to show a client one of the files or multiple files from this camera directly and giving it to them to be able to share right away, or if you want to share it yourself. So what I usually do is hit one of the function buttons here. It's usually that one, just tap that one, and it pulls up the Wi-Fi options. Click connect. If you connected once, it's easier to connect repeatedly after that onto this. So just click that, connect on my phone, and I can download whatever I want to be able to share it instantly or be able to show someone or send it to someone else. So it's been great. If you're big into social media and want to get content out regularly and you use this camera, that comes in very handy. The next one is 4K 60 frames per second. So shooting weddings, I do a lot of slow motion, and being able to do it in 4K and shooting in a 24 frames per second timeline and slowing that thing down 40% to be able to make it nice and slow and smooth, it has been awesome, and the quality has been awesome. I don't have to upscale. I've seen some people that will shoot 1080, 60 frames a second, upscale to their 4K timeline. I ain't about that. If I have it option on here, I shoot it, I slow it down, and it is awesome. A lot of people complain about the 4K 60 frames a second only being able to be shot in Cinelike D and not Vlog. In my experience with Vlog, I push the colors to what normally should be pushed using a LUT, and there's still some banding and different stuff like that. So I really don't use Vlog much at all unless I'm trying to, like, something very simple. Honestly, Cinelike D is what I use, and I just don't have the LUT all the way up full. I have it pushed back a smaller percentage to give me just the look that I want. So 4K 60 frames a second comes in really handy shooting in Cinelike D for whatever you need, and I love it. The next thing is being able to use a speed booster like this one and being able to adapt lenses on here. So we all know the Nifty 50 by Canon, a very cheap lens, but a very solid lens. This is the Nifty 50, but it's the STM version. It's supposed to be the sharper one out of them. And adapting this to a speed booster, it shows up as f1.3 on here. So being able to use all sorts of Canon lenses. I also know that there's alternatives other than speed boosters that can adapt Nikon, that's how I started when I first switched to Panasonic. Coming from Nikon, I adapted the glass onto here using a Nikon mounted adapter. But now with the speed booster, going all Canon, got the Nifty 50 using the Sigma 18 to 35 1.8. That shows up as 1.2 on here as an f-stop. That's like the most amazing setup I've ever shot with using this GH5. So being able to adapt lenses onto this camera comes in huge. Yes, native lenses look good, but having more options for different looks and different angles using more lenses is very awesome because the sensor is smaller. So you use glass that is meant for bigger sensors, so it's adapted to be able to reduce the focal length and all that stuff down into a smaller sensor, causing more light, and actually makes the lens closer to a Super 35 instead of a Micro Four Thirds. So being able to adapt lenses using this speed booster, It's awesome. Number 5 is the still photos on here. So being able to shoot RAW on here and capturing still photos at 20 megapixels is awesome. I came from the GH4, I think it was 16 megapixels. It has some really good images, but having a little bit more real estate with a megapixel shooting at 20 is very awesome. And I also found out too that I like to shoot in the 3x2 format, which the Micro Four Thirds sensor is actually a 4x3, and I'm used to shooting on like a 35 millimeter sensor size. So shooting in 3x2 gives me that same dimensions that I would use from other cameras. So I shoot in that, and then I also shoot RAW. And what you could do whenever you go to edit in Lightroom, yes, the image looks good and everything, but when you go to Lightroom, if your composition isn't exactly where you want it, you still have it gives you the whole RAW file. It'll show up as your 3x2 if that's what you shoot in, and if that's what you present people with, but it actually gives you the entire 4x3 RAW file. So say maybe you cut off the top of someone's head, and you want to restructure that, you go to the crop tool and you're able to adjust it more. So it comes in very handy with shooting on the move and being able to get some awesome pictures out of here. Shooting standard, I usually stay standard and natural mostly. If I ever need like a quick JPEG to come off and edit it on my phone, but if you have time, I recommend shooting RAW, taking it in Lightroom or whatever your photo editor is, and editing it to how you like, and you're able to push these files very dramatically to get really good looks. And yeah, the larger megapixel size on this is awesome. It's such a good camera. That's 5. One bonus thing about Panasonic is that they release updates very regularly. One of the updates they released was actually an answer to one of my gripes of wanting more status on your wanting more information on your battery status, which only had 3 bars, and they updated it and they gave us 4, which is not dramatically huge, but it is better than what it was to be able to tell how much battery power you have left. So there you have it, 5 things that I love about the Panasonic GH5 and one bonus tip. Peace.